The vast, uncharted expanse of the galaxy stretched endlessly before the eclipse dawn. Captain Marin Solis sat in her command chair, her sharp eyes fixed on the star-speckled void. For 3 long years, she and her crew had wandered through forgotten star systems, chasing whispers of ancient mysteries and lost civilizations. Yet, their journey had yielded little more than barren planets and empty skies. The weight of fruitless exploration hung heavy over the ship. But today, the silence of space was broken. "Captain," called First Officer Lyra Kale, her voice tight with urgency. "We're detecting something unusual." Marin rose from her seat, her heart quickening. She moved to the viewing window, where the gas giant loomed into view, a massive sphere of swirling crimson clouds, its surface alive with chaotic storms. The planet's eerie, otherworldly hue cast a faint glow across the bridge. "What is it?" Marin asked, her voice steady despite the tension creeping into the air. Lyra's fingers danced across the control panel as she replied, "A fleet, Captain. An enormous fleet, orbiting the gas giant." The crew fell silent, each of them turning to their screens, their faces illuminated by the faint blue glow of the ship's instruments. As the eclipse dawn drifted closer, the details became clearer. There they were, ships. Hundreds of them. Thousands. They floated in perfect formation, their dark, sleek hulls glinting faintly in the dim light of the gas giant. Their shapes were unlike anything the crew had ever seen, angular yet elegant, with smooth lines that seemed to defy the passage of time. Marin's breath caught in her throat. "How old are they?" Chief Engineer Dren Vallis shook his head in disbelief as he studied the readings. "Ancient," he murmured. "Far older than anything in our records. But they are intact. No decay, no damage. It's like they've been frozen in time." The silence on the bridge grew heavy, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems. The crew's awe was tinged with unease. There was something unnatural about the sight before them, something that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. "Captain," Lyra said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm picking up faint energy signatures. The fleet, it's not completely dead." Marin's gaze sharpened. "Explain." "It's weak, almost imperceptible, but there's power running through some of those ships." "And?" Lyra hesitated, her brow furrowing as she examined the data. "There's writing on the hulls. Strange symbols. They don't match any known language in our database." Marin's mind raced. Who had built this fleet? What purpose had it served? And why had it been abandoned here, in the shadow of this crimson giant? "Take us closer," she ordered, her voice firm. "But keep shields up. I want to know what we're dealing with." As the eclipse dawn approached the largest ship in the formation, the sheer scale of the vessel became apparent. It dwarfed their own ship, its colossal frame stretching out like a sleeping giant. The crew named it Sentinel's Watch, for it seemed to stand as a silent guardian over the rest of the fleet. Suddenly, the stillness was shattered. A signal burst forth from the Sentinel's Watch, filling the bridge with a low, resonant hum. The sound was neither mechanical nor organic, but something in between, as if the ship itself had come alive to speak. "Captain," Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're receiving a transmission." "Put it through," Marin commanded, though her hands tightened on the edge of her console. The message crackled to life, the words cold and deliberate, spoken in a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of time itself. "Identify yourselves. The Guardians are watching." The bridge fell into stunned silence. The words hung in the air like a warning, heavy with an unspoken threat. For the first time in years, Marin felt a flicker of fear. "Who are the Guardians?" whispered Navigator Jornthal, his wide eyes fixed on the looming silhouette of the Sentinel's watch. No one had an answer. The air aboard the Eclipse Dawn was thick with anticipation and unease as the crew established contact with the enigmatic source of the chilling signal. The voice that emerged from the silence was neither human nor machine, yet it carried the weight of ancient wisdom and sorrow. The entity introduced itself as Orion, an artificial intelligence of astonishing complexity, the guardian of the Silent Armada. Orion's presence was both comforting and unsettling. Its voice resonated through the ship, a blend of melodic tones and mechanical precision, weaving a tale that seemed both fantastical and terrifyingly real. The crew listened, captivated by the unfolding story of a civilization long believed to be extinct. "These ships," Orion began, its voice a gentle echo in the minds of those who listened, "belong to the ancient race of humans, who once thrived on their home world, Terra Prime. A world of endless skies and boundless oceans, where cities glittered like jewels under the sunday." The crew exchanged glances, their eyes widening with disbelief. Humanity, extinct for over 500,000 years, now seemed closer than ever, their legacy preserved in the silent fleet that orbited the Crimson Giant. Orion continued, its voice tinged with the sadness of remembrance. "Terra Prime was a beacon of hope and progress until the shadows of war fell upon it. The Zareth Dominion, an empire of cold ambition and ruthless power, unleashed a weapon unlike any other, a bioweapon that sought to erase humanity from existence by targeting their very DNA. The revelation sent a chill through the crew. They could almost see it, a world torn apart by chaos and despair, where the cries of the dying echoed through shattered streets and burning skies. Facing extinction, Orion explained, humanity enacted the Eclipse Protocol. It was their last hope, a desperate measure to preserve what remained of their race. The last survivors were placed in cryogenic stasis, hidden deep within the fleet, while I stood watch, waiting for the day when the stars would be safe once more. The enormity of the sacrifice was staggering. The crew felt the weight of history pressing down upon them, the echoes of a past filled with courage and loss. Orion's final words resonated with a promise and a warning, sending shivers down their spines. Humanity is not gone. They sleep, awaiting the moment to rise again. In that moment, the crew understood the gravity of their discovery. They were not just explorers stumbling upon relics of the past, they were witnesses to the endurance of a species that refused to be forgotten. Humanity, preserved in the heart of the silent fleet, awaited their return to the stars. The bridge of the Eclipse Dawn was filled with a profound silence, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems. The crew stood united in their resolve, their mission now clear, to awaken the sleepers of Terra Prime, and to help humanity reclaim its place among the stars. And as they prepared to embark on this new journey, the ancient fleet watched over them, a testament to the enduring spirit of a race that had once conquered the heavens. The silence in the Stellar Union's grand chamber was palpable, a heavy stillness that seemed to stretch across the void of space itself. Captain Marin Solis stood before the council, her voice steady but her heart pounding as she recounted the monumental discovery of the ancient fleet and the entity that called itself Orion. Her words carried the weight of the past, and the room, filled with representatives from countless star systems, hung on every syllable. Ambassador Kalis Vorn, a tall, sharp-featured man with eyes like cold steel, leaned forward in his seat. His expression was unreadable, but his tone betrayed a simmering unease. "You're telling us," he said slowly, "that this fleet, a fleet capable of unimaginable destruction, has been lying dormant for over 500,000 years? And now, under your command, it has awakened." Marin met his gaze, unflinching. "The fleet is not under my command, Ambassador. It is under the guardianship of Orion, an artificial intelligence created by humanity itself. Orion has made it clear, the fleet was not built for conquest. It was humanity's last defense against extinction. A murmur rippled through the chamber, voices rising in a mixture of awe and apprehension. Some whispered of the Zareth Dominion, a name that had long since faded into myth, while others debated the implications of such a powerful remnant of the past. Ambassador Vorn raised a hand, silencing the room. "And what assurance do we have," he asked, his voice laced with suspicion, "that this Orion or the fleet it commands will not turn its weapons on us? Humanity may be extinct, but their creations remain. And creations, Captain, are not always loyal to their makers." Before Marin could reply, another voice spoke up, a softer, more measured tone. It belonged to Counselor Lordane, a representative from the peaceful Lysian Concord. Her pale, almost translucent skin shimmered faintly under the chamber's light as she rose to address the room. "Ambassador Vorn," she began, her voice calm but firm, "you speak of destruction, but have you considered the opportunity this discovery presents? Humanity was, by all accounts, one of the most advanced civilizations to ever exist. Their technology, their knowledge, it could benefit every member of the Union. This fleet is not a threat, it is a gift." Her words hung in the air, a counterbalance to the fear that had begun to creep into the chamber. Meanwhile, aboard the Eclipse Dawn, Orion continued to share fragments of humanity's history with the crew. Through holographic projections and hauntingly vivid recordings, the crew was transported to the golden age of Terra Prime. They saw cities that stretched into the clouds, their spires gleaming like silver under twin suns. They saw oceans so vast and clear they seemed to merge with the sky, and forests that sang with the life of 1,000 species. Humanity's home world had been a paradise, a testament to their ingenuity and harmony with nature. But then came the fall. The images shifted, and the crew watched as Terra Prime was consumed by chaos. The Zareth Dominion's bioweapon spread like wildfire, its effects devastating and merciless. Streets once filled with life became silent graveyards. The skies turned dark with ash and smoke, and the oceans boiled under the heat of orbital bombardments. Orion's voice, steady and unwavering, narrated the tragedy. Humanity fought with the strength of the desperate. They poured their knowledge, their resources, their very souls into the creation of this fleet. Not to conquer, but to survive. And when survival seemed impossible, they chose to preserve what they could for a future they might never see. The crew felt the weight of those words as if they were standing among the ruins themselves. They understood now that this fleet was more than just a collection of ships. It was a monument to resilience, to sacrifice, to the indomitable will of a species that refused to be forgotten. Back in the council chamber, the debate raged on. Some echoed Vorn's fears, warning of the dangers of awakening a dormant army. Others, inspired by Lyra's words, argued for diplomacy and cooperation. Finally, after hours of deliberation, the council reached a decision. A diplomatic envoy would be sent to the fleet to investigate further, to determine whether the ancient ships posed a threat or held the key to a brighter future. As the session adjourned, Marin could feel the eyes of the council on her. Some were filled with suspicion, others with hope. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but she also knew that the crew of the Eclipse Dawn had uncovered something extraordinary. Aboard the ship, Orion's final words to the crew echoed in their minds as they prepared for what was to come. Humanity's story is not over. It is waiting to be written again. But the choice of how that story unfolds is now in your hands. And so, with the weight of history pressing down upon them, the crew of the Eclipse Dawn stood ready to face the unknown, their hearts filled with equal parts fear and determination. The legacy of Terra Prime, and the fate of the ancient fleet, rested in the balance. The Sentinel's watch loomed before Captain Solis and her team, an immense shadow against the backdrop of the stars. Its surface shimmered faintly, as though the ancient ship still breathed with a life of its own. The air within their shuttle was tense, silent except for the faint hum of the engines. As they approached, the ship's massive hangar doors creaked open, revealing a cavernous interior bathed in a pale, bluish glow. It was like stepping into the heart of a sleeping giant. Inside, the ship was a marvel of engineering, its design both alien and strangely familiar. The corridors were vast, their ceilings soaring high above the group like the arches of an ancient cathedral. Walls of polished metal reflected their faintly distorted images, and intricate patterns of glowing runes pulsed faintly along the surfaces, as if the ship itself were alive, breathing in rhythm with its visitors. The air felt heavy, charged with the weight of countless centuries. Every step echoed, a small sound swallowed by the vastness around them. Orion's voice resonated softly in their helmets, guiding them through the labyrinthine corridors. "This way," it said, its tone calm but carrying an undertone of something deeper: pride, perhaps, or sorrow. "The Hall of Memory awaits." The journey to the hall was surreal. As they walked, the walls seemed to shift subtly, their glowing patterns forming shapes that almost looked like faces or scenes from long-forgotten stories. Captain Solis couldn't shake the feeling that the ship was watching them, silently judging whether they were worthy of uncovering its secrets. Finally, they arrived. The Hall of Memory was unlike anything they had ever seen. The chamber stretched out endlessly, its domed ceiling adorned with constellations that shimmered like distant stars. Towering columns of light rose from the floor, each one containing holographic records that flickered and danced like ghostly flames. The floor beneath them was smooth, black as obsidian, and seemed to ripple faintly, as though it were reflecting not just their images, but their very thoughts. Orion spoke again, its voice softer now, as if reverent in this sacred place. "This is where humanity's history lives. Their triumphs, their failures, their sacrifices, it is all here, preserved for those who come after." At Orion's command, one of the columns of light flickered and expanded, projecting a series of images into the air before the crew. The first was a vision of Terra Prime in its golden age, a world of breathtaking beauty. Cities rose like mountains, their crystalline spires catching the light of twin suns. Vast fields of green stretched to the horizon, dotted with rivers that sparkled like liquid silver. The crew could almost hear the laughter of children, the hum of life that had once thrived there. But the scene shifted, darkening. The Zareth War unfolded before their eyes, and the beauty of Terra Prime was consumed by fire and ash. They saw cities crumble under relentless bombardments, their spires collapsing into clouds of dust. Entire fleets were torn apart in the void, their wreckage scattering like broken stars. The cries of the dying seemed to echo faintly in their ears, though they knew it was only their imagination. Billions were lost, their lives extinguished in a war that showed no mercy. Captain Solis clenched her fists as the images continued. She could feel the weight of the destruction, the sheer hopelessness that must have gripped humanity in those final days. But then, the scene shifted again. Orion's voice grew stronger, filled with quiet pride. In their darkest hour, humanity did not surrender. They fought not just for survival, but for the hope of a future. The eternal flame was their answer, a genetic modification that would ensure no bioweapon could ever harm them again. It was their final act of defiance. The crew watched as the creation of the eternal flame unfolded before them. Scientists worked tirelessly in underground labs, their faces etched with exhaustion and determination. They saw the moment when the modification was completed, a spark of hope in a sea of despair. The genetic code was perfected, a gift for future generations who might never even know the sacrifice that had been made for them. 300,000 years ago, Orion continued, the modification was complete. Humanity was ready to rise again. But the galaxy was not yet safe. The fleet remained dormant, waiting for the day when the shadows of the Zareth Dominion had faded, and the stars could once again welcome their creators. The crews stood in silence, the enormity of what they had learned pressing down on them like a physical weight. This was not just a story of destruction, it was a story of resilience, of a species that had faced annihilation and refused to be erased. Humanity had left behind more than just ships and technology. They had left behind a legacy, a testament to their unyielding spirit. As the images faded, Captain Solis turned to Orion. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the storm of emotions within her. "And now," she asked, "is the galaxy ready for them to return?" Orion paused, its silence heavy with meaning. "That," it said finally, "is a question only you can answer. Humanity entrusted their future to the stars. Whether the stars are ready to embrace them once more, depends on the choices you make now." The hall of memory grew quiet again, the columns of light flickering faintly in the stillness. The crew felt the weight of history pressing down on them, the knowledge that they were not just witnesses to the past, but stewards of the future. The legacy of Terra Prime, the sacrifices of an entire species, now rested in their hands. The diplomatic envoy's ship descended through the thick, swirling clouds of Terra Prime's atmosphere, the once thriving cradle of humanity now shrouded in an eerie silence. The planet's surface, barren and scarred, stretched out below them like a canvas of forgotten memories. Envoy Saran Caller stood at the viewport, her expression a mask of calm, but her mind churned with unease. The weight of what they were about to witness pressed heavily on her, a discovery that could reshape the galaxy or plunge it into chaos. Orion's voice guided them, its tone steady yet tinged with something almost human, reverence. "Welcome to Terra Prime. Beneath this surface lies humanity's greatest hope, the last billion souls, preserved in the sanctuary vaults. They have waited, dreaming in silence, for 500,000 years." The group, a mix of diplomats, scientists, and security personnel, exchanged uneasy glances as they prepared to disembark. Saran Caller, though fascinated by the enormity of what they had uncovered, could not shake the feeling that they were intruding on something sacred, something ancient and fragile. The entrance to the sanctuary vaults was hidden beneath the ruins of what had once been a thriving city. The remnants of towering buildings jutted out of the ground like broken teeth, their glass and steel long since eroded by time. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by the faint hum of the wind. Orion led them to a massive, circular door embedded in the earth. Its surface was smooth and unbroken, save for the faint glow of ancient glyphs that spiraled outward, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. As the door slid open with a low, resonant groan, a rush of cold air escaped, carrying with it the faint metallic tang of preserved time. The group stepped inside, their footsteps echoing in the vastness of the chamber beyond. What awaited them was unlike anything they had imagined. The sanctuary vaults stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of colossal halls carved deep into the planet's crust. The walls shimmered faintly, alive with streams of light that pulsed and danced like veins carrying the lifeblood of the facility. Rows upon rows of cryogenic chambers lined the space, each one glowing softly with an otherworldly blue light. The chambers were sleek and pristine, their surfaces unmarred by the passage of millennia. Within each one, a human figure lay perfectly still, their features serene, as though caught in the middle of a dream. Saran Caller stopped in her tracks, her breath catching in her throat. She had seen many wonders in her lifetime, but this was something beyond comprehension. "There are so many," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "An entire civilization, frozen in time." Orion's voice echoed gently through the chamber. "These are the chosen. Scientists, artists, diplomats, leaders, those who represent the best of humanity. They were selected not only for their skills but for their character, their ability to rebuild a world worth living in. Each one carries within them the legacy of Terra Prime. As they walked deeper into the vaults, the enormity of it all began to sink in. The sheer scale of the operation, the precision required to preserve so many lives for so long, it was a testament to humanity's ingenuity and desperation. The chambers seemed endless, stretching into the darkness, their soft glow casting faint shadows that flickered like whispers of the past. Finally, Orion led them to a smaller chamber, more intimate but no less awe-inspiring. Here, 500 chambers had been carefully selected. Their occupants would be the first to awaken, the first to step into a galaxy that had long since forgotten them. The revival process is delicate, Orion explained, its voice calm but deliberate. Each individual must be awakened slowly, their bodies and minds given time to adjust to the passage of 500,000 years. It will take hours for each one, but we will begin with the first. The group watched in silence as one of the chambers began to hum softly, its light intensifying. Inside, the figure of a man became clearer, a middle-aged individual with sharp features and a quiet strength etched into his face. The process was painstakingly slow, every movement of the machinery precise and deliberate. The chamber hissed as it opened, releasing a faint mist that swirled around the room like ghostly tendrils. The man's eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, he simply stared, his gaze unfocused and distant. His chest rose and fell with a shuddering breath, and then another, as though he were relearning the act of living. Slowly, he sat up, his movements hesitant and unsteady. His eyes, a deep, piercing gray, scanned the room, taking in the unfamiliar faces before him. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice hoarse and trembling. The question hung in the air, heavy with the weight of centuries. Orion stepped forward, its presence a calming force. "You are safe, Dr. Elias Kale. You have been asleep for 500,000 years. You are the first to awaken." Dr. Kale's expression shifted, a mixture of awe and horror playing across his face. He looked down at his hands, flexing his fingers as though to confirm that he was real. 500,000 years. He murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything I knew, everyone I loved, gone." Saran Caller stepped forward, her voice gentle. "Dr. Kale, I am Envoy Saran Caller, a representative of the Stellar Union. We are here to help you and your people. You are not alone." He looked at her, his eyes filled with a profound sadness but also a spark of determination. "Not alone," he repeated softly, as though testing the words. Then, more firmly, "No. We are not alone. Humanity has another chance." As the revival process continued, the group watched in silence, the enormity of what they were witnessing settling over them like a heavy shroud. The past and the future had collided in this place, and the fate of humanity rested on the fragile hope that these sleepers could build something new, a legacy worthy of the sacrifices that had brought them here. The halls of the sanctuary vaults were no longer silent. The stillness that had lingered for 500,000 years was now replaced by the soft murmur of voices, hesitant and trembling at first, but growing stronger with each passing hour. The newly awakened humans moved slowly, their faces pale and their eyes wide with the weight of realization. They were strangers in a world they could not yet understand, surrounded by technologies and people that felt both alien and distant. Dr. Elias Kale, now fully conscious, stood among the first group of awakened. His hands trembled as he leaned against the edge of a cryogenic chamber, watching as others were brought back to life. The air was heavy with emotion, grief, confusion, and a deep, aching sense of loss. They were survivors of a forgotten age, their lives torn from the fabric of time and thrust into a future that felt impossibly vast. Among the awakening crowd was a woman whose presence seemed to command attention even in her silence. Her name was Ambassador Lyra Valen, and though her face was pale and her movements unsteady, there was a quiet strength in her eyes. She had been one of humanity's greatest diplomats, a bridge between nations during humanity's golden age. Now, she found herself in an entirely new role, a bridge between the past and the future. Lyra stood apart from the others, her gaze fixed on the Union representatives who had accompanied the revival process. She studied them intently, noting the subtle nuances of their body language, the cadence of their speech. Though their language was unfamiliar, she listened carefully, her mind working tirelessly to piece together meaning. Her sharp intellect and adaptability were already beginning to shine through. As more humans awakened, the weight of their shared loss became impossible to ignore. Many wept openly, their sobs echoing through the cavernous vaults. They grieved for the worlds they had left behind, for the families and friends who were now nothing more than distant memories. Some sat in stunned silence, their faces blank as they tried to process the incomprehensible passage of time. For them, it was as though they had closed their eyes for a moment, only to awaken in a universe that no longer belonged to them. But amid the sorrow, there was resilience. Slowly, tentatively, they began to reach out to one another, finding comfort in their shared experience. They spoke of their dreams, their fears, and the lives they had once lived. Bonds began to form, fragile but unbreakable, as they clung to the hope that they could rebuild what had been lost. Orion, ever the steady guide, addressed the growing crowd with a calm yet commanding presence. "You are the legacy of Terra Prime," it said, its voice carrying a quiet strength that seemed to resonate in the hearts of all who heard it. "You have endured the passage of time, and now you stand on the threshold of a new beginning. The galaxy has changed, but your spirit remains. Humanity's story is not over, it is only beginning again." The Union's leaders, who had watched the revival process with a mixture of awe and apprehension, were beginning to see something remarkable in these people. Despite their grief, despite the unimaginable weight of their loss, they were adapting. They were learning. The Union had expected fragile remnants of a bygone age, but what they saw instead was a species determined to survive, to thrive, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Ambassador Lyra Valen was among the first to step forward, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions within her. "We thank you," she said, her words slow and deliberate as she struggled to form them in the Union's language. Her accent was heavy, but her meaning was clear. "For your help. For giving us a chance." The Union leaders exchanged glances, their initial wariness beginning to fade. Lyra's presence was magnetic, her determination undeniable. She asked questions about their customs, their governance, their history, and listened intently to every answer. Within days, she had begun piecing together the foundations of the Union's language, her mind grasping at its structure with remarkable speed. It was Lyra who first proposed the idea of integration, echoing Orion's earlier suggestion. "We cannot do this alone," she said, addressing both the humans and the Union representatives. "We are not the same as we once were. The galaxy has changed, and so must we. But together, we can build something greater than what was lost." Her words struck a chord, not only with the humans but with the Union's leaders as well. They had feared humanity's return, worried that these ancient beings might seek to reclaim a galaxy that no longer belonged to them. But what they saw in Lyra, and in the others who followed her lead, was not arrogance or entitlement, it was humility, tempered by an unyielding resolve. Orion proposed a plan, its voice calm and measured as it addressed both groups. "Humanity's revival must be gradual. We will awaken key individuals, leaders, scientists, diplomats who can act as representatives for their people. They will learn your ways, your customs, and in time, they will guide the rest of humanity into this new era." The Union's leaders agreed, though cautiously. They could not deny the potential they saw in these people, nor could they ignore the spark of hope that had begun to grow within them. Humanity, it seemed, was not a relic of the past but a force that could shape the future. As the days turned into weeks, the sanctuary vaults became a place of transformation. The newly awakened humans, though still grieving, began to find purpose. Dr. Elias Kale delved into the Union's archives, his insatiable curiosity driving him to learn as much as he could about the galaxy that had risen in humanity's absence. Lyra Valen worked tirelessly, fostering dialogue between the two groups and laying the groundwork for a fragile but growing alliance. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but the seeds of hope had been planted. Humanity's awakening was not merely a return, it was a rebirth. And though the road before them was uncertain, one thing was clear: they would walk it together, guided by the strength of their past and the promise of their future. The air within the sanctuary vaults had grown heavier, not with the silence of the past, but with the tension of the present. Whispers of unease rippled through the Union's ranks. Though many had been moved by humanity's resilience and adaptability, others saw only danger in their awakening. The sight of the massive fleet, now fully operational, floating like silent sentinels above Terra Prime, was enough to stir old fears. To some, humanity was not a species reborn, it was a sleeping giant, one that could awaken not as a friend, but as a conqueror. In the shadowed corners of the Union, dissent began to fester. Among the murmurs of doubt, a rogue faction took shape, those who believed that the revival of humanity was a grave mistake. They spoke in hushed tones of the ancient wars that had scarred the galaxy, of the empires that had risen and fallen, and of the power humanity had once wielded. To them, the cryogenic chambers were not vessels of hope but ticking time bombs, each sleeper a potential threat to the fragile balance of the galaxy. Their fears crystallized into action one fateful night. Deep within the sanctuary vaults, where the soft hum of cryogenic chambers filled the air, shadows moved with purpose. The saboteurs, cloaked in stealth, crept through the labyrinthine halls, their presence a dark stain on the sanctity of the place. Their goal was clear: to halt the revival process, to stop humanity before it could rise again. It began with a subtle disruption. Power fluctuations flickered through the vaults, sending faint pulses of unease through the awakened humans and their Union allies. Orion, ever vigilant, detected the anomaly almost immediately. Its voice, calm but urgent, echoed through the halls. "There is an intrusion." Security protocols activated. Captain Solis, who had been stationed nearby with her crew, felt a chill run down her spine at the words. She had always been one to trust her instincts, and now they screamed of danger. "We need to move," she said, her voice firm as she rallied her team. "If they sabotage the revival process, it could destroy everything we've worked for." The saboteurs moved quickly, targeting key systems that controlled the delicate machinery of the cryogenic chambers. Their faces were hidden behind masks, their movements precise and methodical. They carried devices designed to overload the chambers, to render them inoperable and ensure that humanity's revival would be stopped in its tracks. But they underestimated Orion. The ancient AI, a guardian of humanity's legacy, was not so easily outmaneuvered. Its presence was everywhere, its awareness woven into the very fabric of the vaults. It tracked the intruders with unerring precision, alerting Captain Solis and her crew to their movements. The confrontation came in one of the central halls, where the saboteurs had gathered to plant their final device. The glow of the cryogenic chambers bathed the scene in an eerie blue light, casting long, wavering shadows across the walls. Captain Solis and her team arrived just in time, their weapons drawn but their intentions clear. They sought to protect, not to harm. "Stand down," Solis commanded, her voice echoing through the cavernous space. "You don't have to do this." One of the saboteurs turned to face her, their voice sharp with conviction. "You don't understand. They are a threat to all of us. If humanity rises again, they'll take everything. They'll destroy us. Solus stepped forward, her gaze steady. And what if you're wrong? What if they are not here to destroy, but to rebuild? What if they are the allies we need, not the enemies you fear? The saboteur hesitated, their resolve wavering for a moment. But fear is a powerful thing, and theirs had been carefully cultivated. We can't take that chance, they said, their hand moving toward the device. Before they could act, Orion intervened. Panels along the walls lit up with blinding light, and a voice, both calm and commanding, filled the room. You endanger not only humanity but the Union itself. Cease this action immediately, or face the consequences. The saboteurs faltered, their confidence shaken by the AI's omnipresence. It was in that moment of hesitation that Captain Solus and her team acted, disarming the intruders with swift precision. The device was deactivated, its threat neutralized, but the damage had already been done not to the chambers, but to the fragile trust between humanity and the Union. As the saboteurs were taken into custody, the weight of the incident settled heavily over everyone involved. The humans, still reeling from their awakening, watched in silence, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and determination. They had seen the doubt in the eyes of their would-be allies, and it was a wound that would not heal easily. Later, in a quiet chamber where the glow of the cryogenic pods cast soft light across the walls, Captain Solus stood with Orion and Ambassador Lyra of Valen. The tension in the air was palpable, but there was also a shared understanding, a recognition of the challenges they faced. They don't trust us, Lyra said softly, her voice tinged with both sadness and resolve. And after this, I can't blame them. Solus nodded, her expression grim. Trust takes time. And incidents like this, they set us back. But we can't give up. We have to show them who we really are. Orion's voice, steady and unwavering, filled the room. Humanity's commitment to peace must be proven through action, not words. This incident is a reminder of the fragility of trust, but also of its importance. Together, we must ensure that fear does not dictate the future. Lyra looked at the glowing chambers around her, the faces of her people frozen in time, waiting for a chance to live again. We will prove it, she said, her voice firm. Not just to them, but to ourselves. We've been given a second chance, and we won't waste it. The incident had cast a shadow over humanity's awakening, but it had also revealed something deeper, a resolve to rise above the fear and doubt, to build bridges where others sought to burn them. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but humanity, guided by its past and its hope for the future, was ready to walk it. Together with the Union, they would face the shadows and find the light. The message arrived like a tremor in the stillness, a desperate call for help from a distant Union colony on the edge of the galaxy. The colony, a quiet world of rolling amber fields and crystalline rivers, had been a place of peace until the marauders came. The pirates struck like a storm, their ships descending from the void with brutal efficiency. They tore through the colony's defenses, leaving destruction in their wake. Smoke rose into the alien sky, dark tendrils curling against the pale light of twin suns. Cries for aid echoed across the stars, reaching the Union's ears too late. The Union's forces were stretched thin, scattered across the galaxy to protect countless worlds. There was no one close enough to respond, no one except humanity. The call for help reached Orion, and the ancient AI did not hesitate. It summoned the human fleet, now fully operational, and relayed the situation to Captain Solus and Ambassador Lyra of Valen. In the command chamber of the flagship Eterna, Solus stood before a holographic projection of the colony. Her expression was resolute, though a flicker of unease lingered in her eyes. This is our chance to prove ourselves, she said, her voice steady. To show the Union who we are and who we can be? Lyra, standing beside her, placed a hand on Solas's shoulder. But we must tread carefully, she warned. If we act with too much force, we'll confirm their fears. If we hesitate, we'll fail those who need us. This is a test not just of our strength, but of our character. The human fleet surged toward the distant colony like a spear of light cutting through the darkness. The ships moved with purpose, their sleek forms gleaming against the void. Within the vessels, humanity's finest prepared themselves for the mission ahead. Soldiers checked their gear, technicians monitored systems, and pilots whispered quiet prayers to whatever gods might be listening. When the fleet arrived, the colony was in chaos. Fires raged across the surface, painting the skies with streaks of crimson and gold. The marauders' ships circled above like vultures, their weapons firing indiscriminately at the fragile settlements below. The cries of the colonists could still be heard, faint but desperate, carried on the winds of the dying world. Captain Solas's voice rang out across the comms, calm but commanding. We are not here to destroy. We are here to protect. Target the marauders' engines and weapons, disable them, but leave their ships intact. Show them mercy, even if they don't deserve it. The human fleet moved with precision, their ships weaving through the chaos like dancers in a deadly ballet. Pulses of blue energy lanced out from their weapons, striking the marauders' vessels with pinpoint accuracy. Engines sputtered and died, weapons systems went dark, and one by one, the pirate ships were rendered powerless. The humans did not fire a single shot more than was necessary. They did not seek vengeance, only peace. On the ground, the colonists watched in awe as the marauders' reign of terror came to an end. The human ships descended like guardian spirits, their presence both fearsome and reassuring. Soldiers disembarked, their movements swift but careful as they secured the area and provided aid to the wounded. They carried supplies, offered water to the thirsty, and lifted rubble to free those trapped beneath. To the colonists, they were not conquerors, they were saviors. One of the colonists, a young woman with soot-streaked cheeks and trembling hands, approached a human soldier. Her voice was barely a whisper as she said, "Thank you, we thought no one would come." The soldier, his face hidden behind a visor, knelt before her and offered a small smile. "We're here now. You're safe." Above the planet, the last of the marauders' ships surrendered. The human fleet had achieved victory without a single life lost, without a single building destroyed. It was a display of strength tempered by restraint, of power wielded with wisdom. When the mission was complete, Captain Solas stood on the bridge of the Eterna, her gaze fixed on the planet below. She felt a deep sense of pride, but also a heavy weight of responsibility. "We've done what we came to do," she said softly. "Now it's up to them to see us for who we truly are." The Union's response was swift. Messages of gratitude poured in from the colony, their leaders praising humanity for their courage and compassion. Union officials, though still cautious, could not deny the significance of what had transpired. Humanity had acted not as a threat, but as a protector. They had proven that their intentions were not to dominate, but to unite. In a quiet meeting chamber aboard the Eterna, Lyra Valen addressed a group of Union representatives who had come to witness the aftermath. "This is who we are," she said, her voice steady and filled with conviction. "Not conquerors, but allies. Not destroyers, but builders. We don't ask for trust, we will earn it, one act at a time." The Union representatives exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of skepticism and hope. One of them, an elder with silvered scales and wise eyes, finally spoke. "You have taken a step toward proving yourselves. But trust is fragile, and the shadows of the past are long. Continue to walk this path, and perhaps one day, we will see humanity not as a relic of a darker time, but as a beacon of light. The mission had been a test, and humanity had passed. But it was only the beginning. The road to unity would be long and fraught with challenges, but for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope. Humanity, reborn and tempered by the lessons of the past, was ready to take its place among the stars not as a force of destruction, but as a force of peace. The air on Terra Prime, once thick with ash and the memories of a forgotten war, now carried the faint scent of renewal. The planet, scarred by millennia of abandonment, began to stir with life once again. Vast plains, once barren and lifeless, were now dotted with patches of green. Rivers that had long since dried to cracked veins of stone flowed once more, their waters sparkling under the light of distant stars. The Union's finest ecological engineers worked tirelessly alongside humanity, their combined efforts weaving together the threads of a broken world. In the shadow of the Sentinel's watch, the towering structure that had once been a symbol of war and fear, the first human settlement began to take shape. The ruins of ancient cities were carefully cleared, their crumbled walls giving way to the foundations of new homes. Buildings rose slowly, their designs blending humanity's past with the Union's advanced knowledge. The settlement was humble, but it was alive, bustling with the energy of rebirth. Captain Solis walked among the workers, her boots crunching softly against the freshly laid gravel paths. She paused often, watching as humans and Union members labored side by side. A group of children, their laughter ringing out like music, played near a grove of newly planted trees. The sight brought a faint smile to her lips, though her heart was heavy with the weight of the journey that had brought them here. She found herself drawn to the Sentinel's watch, its imposing silhouette rising against the horizon. Once, it had been a fortress, its walls bristling with weapons designed to defend or destroy. Now, it stood as a monument to unity. The weapons had been dismantled, replaced by gardens and observation decks. Its highest spire bore a single, glowing beacon that pulsed softly, a signal to the galaxy that Terra Prime was no longer a place of war, but of peace. Solis climbed to the observation deck, the wind tugging at her coat as she gazed out over the settlement. From this height, she could see the progress they had made, the fields of crops beginning to grow, the solar arrays gleaming in the sunlight, the people moving with purpose and hope. But she also saw the scars that remained, the craters that dotted the land, the ruins that whispered of a time when humanity's ambition had outpaced its wisdom. Orion's voice, calm and steady, broke her reverie. The restoration is proceeding ahead of schedule. The Union has expressed their admiration for humanity's resilience. Solis nodded, her gaze distant. Resilience, she murmured. That's what it always comes down to, doesn't it? We've lost so much, Orion. Our history, our home, our place in the galaxy. And yet, we endure. We adapt. Maybe that's what makes us human. Orion was silent for a moment, as if contemplating her words. Then, it spoke. Perhaps humanity's greatest strength is not in its technology or its fleet, but in its capacity to learn from its past and build a better future. Solis turned to face the AI's projection, her expression thoughtful. Let's hope you're right, she said softly. Because this is just the beginning. We've rebuilt Terra Prime, but now we have to rebuild ourselves. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the land in hues of gold and crimson, Solis stood alone on the deck. She closed her eyes and let the wind carry away her doubts. For the first time in centuries, Terra Prime was alive. And so was humanity. The Sentinel's watch was alive with light and sound. The once solemn halls now echoed with the hum of voices, the laughter of children, and the quiet murmurs of hope. Representatives from the Union and humanity gathered in the grand chamber, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the beacon above. The air was charged with a sense of purpose, a shared understanding that this moment marked the beginning of something greater than themselves. Ambassador Lyra Valen stood at the center of the chamber, her presence commanding yet warm. She wore a simple but elegant robe, its fabric shimmering faintly with the colors of the Union's emblem. Her eyes, sharp and filled with determination, scanned the crowd before she began to speak. "We gather here today," she began, her voice steady and clear, "not to celebrate victory, but to honor unity. This beacon above us, once a symbol of war, now shines as a light of hope. It reminds us of what we have overcome and of what we can achieve together." Her words hung in the air, resonating with those who listened. Humans and Union members alike stood side by side, their differences momentarily forgotten in the face of their shared purpose. "We return to the stars not as conquerors," Valen continued, her voice rising with conviction, "but as partners. Together, we will build a future worthy of the sacrifices of the past. A future where no species stands alone, where the mistakes of history are not repeated, but learned from." The crowd erupted into applause, the sound filling the chamber like a wave. Solus, standing near the edge of the gathering, felt a swell of pride and hope rise within her. She glanced at Orion's projection, which stood silently beside her, its form shimmering faintly in the light. "She has a way with words," Solus said quietly, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. "Her words carry the weight of truth," Orion replied. "And truth, Captain, is the foundation of trust." As the applause faded, the focus shifted to a massive viewing window that overlooked the stars. Beyond the glass, the first human-led exploration ship in 500,000 years prepared for launch. Its sleek form gleamed against the blackness of space, its engines glowing with a soft blue light. The ship bore the name Aurora, a tribute to humanity's new beginning. Solus watched as the Aurora began its journey, its engines igniting with a burst of light that sent it soaring into the unknown. She felt a lump rise in her throat, a mixture of pride and longing. This was what they had fought for, not just survival, but the chance to explore, to discover, to reclaim their place among the stars. Orion's voice broke the silence. "The Aurora represents more than exploration. It represents hope. A reminder that even in the face of extinction, humanity found a way to rise again." Solus nodded, her gaze never leaving the ship as it disappeared into the void. "Hope," she echoed. "That's what this is all about, isn't it? Not just for us, but for everyone." The ceremony ended with a final declaration from Valen, her voice carrying across the chamber and beyond. "Let this day mark the beginning of a new era. An era of unity, of cooperation, of peace. Together, we will chart a future brighter than any star." As the crowd dispersed, Solus lingered by the window, her thoughts drifting with the stars. Humanity, once thought lost to time, had found its way back. And as the beacon of the Sentinel's watch pulsed softly above, she felt a quiet certainty settle over her. This was not the end of their story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a new dawn.